Okay, hi guys. Today we are here with Kyle Millis, who is a former Division One swimmer at the University of California, Berkeley. He's also a content creator and he now works in the tech world. So, thanks so much for talking with us today, Kyle.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Bella.
Would you mind just starting off just talking about your own recruiting process and how you ended up at Cal Berkeley?
Yeah, for sure. So my recruiting process, I was a swimmer in college at UC Berkeley, was a bit different than most would say. I was a basketball player for 14 years of my early career, but I quickly realized my freshman year of high school that if I wanted to play sports at the next level, which was my goal, that it wasn't going to be basketball. So I quickly pivoted. I had done a little bit of summer league swimming here and there. And I quickly pivoted and turned swimming into a full-time thing for myself. So I really only had like 3 years of club swimming under my belt before I went into college, which, as most athletes are probably asking themselves is, well, how'd you get recruited in time then? My recruiting timeline was very short. It was pretty much get as fast as I possibly can in my, sophomore and first half of my junior year, and then put those times out to coaches and see what happens. I started engaging with coaches in the early parts of my junior year, looking at some more small mid D1 tier schools. But I knew I wanted to go for the fastest schools in the country, and the big blue chips in the sport of swimming. And so I continued to kind of go up market, by being like, hey, I actually am currently talking with XYZ school, similar to yours. Can I take a meeting with you, kind of, to some of the coaches? So started reaching out to a bunch of assistant coaches. That's where I found the most luck when outbounding um, to college coaches. And yeah, I slowly worked my way up and came to realize that the Cal coach, who I definitely wanted to meet with, was going to be coming to an upcoming meet of mine. So our paths crossed there. I introduced myself to him, and the rest is history. I got his phone number. He gave me a call about a week later and was like, "Hey, we'd love to have you come on a trip there." And it wasn't even close. After I took a trip to Cal, I definitely wanted to commit there. So that's kind of the timeline. A very short timeline. But yeah.
Yeah, that's sweet. How important were like other aspects? Obviously, swimming is was important to you in the recruiting process, but how important were other things, aspects of the school when you were going through the process?
Yeah, definitely. I think I always had academics top of mind. And UC Berkeley, obviously the number one public school in America, definitely kind of takes the cake there. But additionally, I wanted to go and do a business school, in college, and actually, not a ton of universities offer an undergrad business major. A lot do, but some of the select ones don't. And so UC Berkeley did. It was kind of an interesting path because you had to not only get into the college, but then perform well the first 2 years of the college to actually get into the business school. So I thankfully ended up having a good enough resume over my first 2 years to get in. But the business school was pretty much the big reason why I did end up going to UC Berkeley. Also, I always say there's four factors in the recruiting process. It's um, athletics, academics, location, and just kind of like the vibe that you get when you're at the school. Is this a place you would want to be? Do you like the people that are on your team? And so obviously the academics and athletics box was checked, and the recruiting process and the recruiting trip kind of validated the rest.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I've heard so many horror stories of people, like getting injured or deciding they don't want to play their sport
Yeah.
anymore, and then they realize that they don't actually really like the school that they're at. So I think all
Yeah.
their aspects are super important.
Yeah, for sure.
So as a swimmer's more of it's not as popular as some of the sports like basketball, football,
Sure.
things like that. Can you explain sort of how the recruiting process is different compared to bigger sports or even team sports where you need highlight videos and you need to go to camps, showcases, things like
Yeah.
that?
Swimming's also a very interesting sport as it's 100% like metrics based.
Right.
There's no highlight reels or anything. It's you definitively went this fast in the pool. That means you're good. So it's very quantitative is the word I'm looking for. And it's pretty easy to determine who's good from who's bad kind of thing. So I don't know, and I obviously wasn't recruited to be a basketball player, so I can't speak to what basketball is like. But I know that you're not going to get wined and dined the same you would probably on the basketball or the football team kind of thing. A lot of the recruiting process and a lot of the recruiting trip was kind of put on by the swimmers. It was like, hey, we're going to take you and we're going to do this like super fun, like, we went and got like, this super cool dinner at this place that they really liked. They were all super excited. We went and got like ice cream sandwiches and stuff after. It was all just like they made their own fun kind of thing. And I saw them just like having fun. And that's what really made me like confirm that, hey, this is a team for me because these are like a group of guys that truly love each other. And that was really cool to see. But also like that I know the football process is like, hey, we're gonna be here, we're gonna be here, we're gonna be here, and everything is gonna be 5 star for you guys.
Mhm.
What they do on those trips, I don't know. But my trip was just like a very wholesome trip. Meeting a group of 30 dudes who were just like, arms wide open. And so that's kind of like what my recruiting trip looked like at Cal. I took a couple of other recruiting trips around the country. And the differences that I kind of saw was just like that team love. I didn't really see that at other places. And so if you see that at a school that you're looking to go to, I would definitely lean into that and try and find people that are like you. You're at the end of the day, I was not going to be the fastest on the Cal swim team. I was not going to be the person that was scoring all the points at the national championship. But I was going to, lean into every single person that I met there who was faster than me, learn what they were doing right, and try and take a couple things from them because I find that if you surround yourself with smart, powerful people, you're going to come out on the end looking just like them.
Yeah, that's definitely an underrated part of the recruiting process because as an athlete, you spend so much time with your team. So you
Yeah.
should at least like hanging around them. That would be helpful for you.
Yeah.
So can you talk about your experience at Cal, what it was like being a D1 swimmer, especially on you guys won a national championship. Like what was it
Yeah.
like in such a competitive program?
Yeah, so I mean, the goal for most of the swimmers on the team was to make the NCAA championship. And then for a select few that were also on the team, it was let's go win an Olympic gold medal kind of thing. And so having those on the exact same, playing field as me, where I was like, I'm just hoping to make it through my freshman year out here, really kind of took me up to that next level. And being a D1 athlete at most schools is awesome. Um, I will say that like the swim team on campus definitely started to get a reputation after my freshman year when we won the national championship. It was like, oh, like these guys aren't just like a regular swim team. There's something going on here in the pools. Our pools are actually right next to the freshman dorms. And so not every freshman, but some of the freshmen that live in those dorms that come through Cal, they'll quickly learn that the swim team is dedicated because we're out there every morning at 5 a.m. or whatever practicing and stuff like that. And they're hearing the whistles and stuff from our coaches. So I think people, when I was at college, quickly started to realize that the swim team's a little bit special here. So we started kind of getting like a reputation around campus, like, hey, these guys are really fast. Subsequently, I'm not going to go trash our basketball and football team, but they did not live up to the hype. So people quickly started realizing like, and it was cool to realize that like, hey, despite not being, the top sport on campus, we definitely had a lot of respect from people throughout campus because they knew we were successful. And I came out of my 4 years of college, 2 national championships up. Um, One was taken away by COVID. We'll never know what happened. All I'm saying was we were number one in the country going into it. Um, but yeah, my experience as a D1 athlete was really cool, life changing. I would just say that overall, the life changing moments that I really had were around my team. It wasn't like any like sort of one competition or one national championship that really defined me. It was probably like the day in, day out. I mean, we're practicing 20, 25 hours a week kind of thing. There's a lot of grit that's built there. There's a lot of hard times. There's a lot of fights with your teammates, and like that is what built me into the person that I am today. I can't be thankful enough for the college athletic experience.
Yeah, that's super cool because swimming is such an underrated sport, and football and basketball definitely aren't. So I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
super cool that you guys got that. Um,
Started to get a little recognition by the end.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you came in, how was it, what was it like adapting to being in a Division 1 athlete and then also trying to balance being a good student and the other things that go into just being a student at a college?
Yeah, I remember first day like walking on the pool deck. I walked in and there was two Olympians that were walking behind me. So the bar was up here for swimming, and then I went to my first lecture the next week after that. Um, and I remember I looked around and I remember the professor asked how many people here were valedictorians of their class, and almost everyone's hand shot up. And I was looking around like, not me. So I just realized that the bar in my life had been raised. I was walking out on the pool deck with Olympians. I was sitting in class with valedictorians. My benchmark for success needed to be raised as well. So I would say like my first semester in college was tough. I failed my first midterm, and that was kind of the quick wake up call that I needed to be like, hey, you cannot coast through this like you coasted through high school. You need to really lean into the academic advisors that the school so kindly provides you for being a student athlete. That's one tip to all student athletes. Most likely your school is going to provide you tutors, academic advisors, and probably a bunch more things all for free. So lean into that. That was super helpful, and that got me right back on track, which was able to help me be in the right mindset going into championship season for swimming. And in being a swimmer, you're going to have to balance traveling for swim meets and also, making class and stuff like that. So, something that was definitely interesting for me in college was I had to select classes where I knew the professor was going to like student athletes. A lot of professors at some of these top tier universities are kind of adverse to athletes in their class because they know that they're going to miss classes, going to need makeup tests and stuff like that. And so I had a couple situations where I had to drop classes just because I was an athlete. But all that to say, it's a lot of work to go do all those makeup tests and stuff like that. I had a teammate who was trying to make the NCAA final. He had the NCAA final that night, sorry, and he was doing a midterm in between the prelims and final session. So that just kind of goes to show, the rigor that Berkeley challenged us. I know that every other school that was there at that national championships, all of them got their tests pushed to next week, but not Berkeley. So that was just kind of the caliber of teachers that were teaching us, and just kind of the environment that I was living in college. It was definitely a once in a lifetime experience for sure.
Yeah, that's actually crazy. But I think that's also a thing that people don't always know going in when you're an athlete. Like sometimes professors just don't want to
Yeah,
adapt to the lifestyle that athletes have. So I think
yeah.
it definitely a wake up call to see when you join. So when you're sort of going through the recruiting process, what would you say is your advice to younger, like high school level swimmers who are trying to find like maybe where is their right fit and
Yeah.
yeah.
This is like the bread and butter of my YouTube content creation these days. I love talking about the college recruiting process, especially for swimmers. So, my biggest advice for swimmers, number one piece of advice is sit down with your parents and craft a really, really good email and then like throw it away. That email is going to serve as like a benchmark for the first email that you write to coaches. Now, everything that you thought was so great, rewrite it again and make it like three times shorter. it needs to be like short and concise. And my advice to student athletes, prospective student athletes, is email the assistant coach and CC the head coach. Um, the assistant coach is most likely going to be the recruiting coordinator. They don't need to see a long essay about how you really want to go to their school. They just need to see the bullet points, especially in a quantitative sport like swimming. They just need to see how fast you are. You don't even have to attach your mixtape or your highlight reel. None of that. Um, they just want to see how fast you are. They want to see your transcript from high school, and they want to see um, just someone who's able to write an email and get their point across to the coaches, because it shows a sign of maturity, that you're able to take this step. You're able to email a coach. You're going to be able to email a college professor when you need something, when you need help. And so I'd say, make sure that the first email, your parents are helping you write it. And then, just completely scrap it and redo it. And there's something to be said for learning and adapting, from doing things multiple times over. Your first email is not going to be the perfect email. And so once you finally get in those coaches' inboxes, what I always said is, just start pushing for that recruiting trip, slightly lean in, take a phone call or two with them. I remember when I was getting recruited, I took like 2 phone calls, and I was so nervous to ask the coach, like, hey, can I get a recruiting trip with you guys? And I remember I was like, at the end of the second call, I was like, hey, is there any chance I can come on a recruiting trip? And he's like, I was waiting for you to ask, Kyle. I think it's a sign of maturity. And if you weren't going to ask at the end of this call, like, I don't know if I wanted to have you on a recruiting trip, but thanks for asking, Kyle. Yeah, you can come on a recruiting trip. So the big piece of advice to all student athletes there is just ask. They're most likely going to give it to you. And it is that sign of maturity that a lot of coaches are looking for. So I'd say, yeah, just ask for that recruiting trip. And then on that recruiting trip in the process, just just be polite to everyone that you meet. There's going to be a lot of bad actors, I would say, on these recruiting trips. Young high school kids trying to show off to the college kids. Trust me, the college kids have seen more than you have in your young high school days. They're not going to be impressed by anything you do, and you're only just going to make a fool of yourself on your recruiting trip. So just be smart, do things you would do around your parents, and be a respectful human being. They're inviting you into their home most likely, or into their environment for the weekend on a recruiting trip. Be respectful of that environment, and don't be that guy that everyone, they all have team meetings first thing on Monday mornings after a recruiting weekend. Don't be the first person that comes out of one of those guys' mouth of, hey, I have a big red flag from this past weekend. So yeah, that's my advice for all student athletes. Kind and respectful, and ask for what you want.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think the recruiting process can definitely be really scary, and you're just
Yeah.
sort of putting yourself out there, and like
Yeah.
just it can be scary trying getting some no's, but you just it's what you have to do.
That's the
So
worst they can say too, is
right,
no. And so
right.
it's not like there's nothing like terrible that's going to be coming down. Worst case scenario is a no.
Yeah. So once you get on a recruiting trip, and what's it like sort of talking to coaches? And how can you tell if a coach is going to be a good coach for you?
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, there's no like telltale sign of if that coach is going to be good for you or not. It's really just based on feel. I mean, all the athletes on the team are definitely going to be fluffing up their experience with that coach. So like you're not going to get a good read on it. But I would just look at the coach's track record. Not every coach is going to be like the nicest person out there. But like you probably not coming to college athletics just to be friends with everyone in the world. So there's a level of put your head down and do it kind of thing in college that like coaches, that's like just the inevitable. And as far as the former happier question around like just the environment of the recruiting process and stuff like that, is that the first part was about the like recruiting trip, right? You said the comfortability of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. I would say just like at a certain point in the recruiting trip, the coaches will sit you down and one-on-one with you and say, "Hey, how'd you like the trip? What are you considering coming here? This is the point at which, if you're set on that school, you're able to commit then and there. And this is also the point of the trip in which they'll start talking scholarship dollars if you're up for that. So just come with the preparedness that if you are a top tier student athlete, there will come a point when you're going to sit down one-on-one with the head coach and he's going to start asking you hard questions. What did you like about my school? Be ready with an answer. He's going to tell you, what didn't you like about the school? Be ready with an answer. And then they're going to start talking scholarship dollars. Know your worth. If another school gave you a full ride and this guy's only going to give you 25% or something like that, leverage that. Don't be afraid to say, "Hey, coach, I'm going to have to take some time to think about that because other school in the conference gave me a full ride." Don't be afraid to tell a coach no or maybe, but not right now. I think coaches that pressure you through the recruiting process, "Hey, no, we need you to commit this weekend. We have a class coming in next weekend. They're all top tier recruits. We won't be able to hold your spot." That's a red flag. I wouldn't go there. I had so many schools do that to me throughout my process. And I wanted to believe that they weren't those schools that would do that, but they were. And I was just like really holding out hope that, like, oh no, these schools aren't bad actors, but they were. Almost every program that is going to force you into committing, they need your commitment. The ones that don't need your commitment are the ones that you probably want to end up at. They, they're that's kind of where I would say you're going to find home, is someone who's not forcing you to be there, but they want you to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So to transition a little,
Sure.
you have a YouTube channel that's sort of centered around sports. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration and how it started?
Yeah. The channel closing in on 20,000 subscribers here. It started out for me as just like my senior year of college. I kind of wanted to document my last year as a student athlete. And I'd always been interested in like content creation and stuff like that. And finally decided I'm gonna take a leap of faith. Let's just do it. That's like the biggest part of content creation, is just getting over that hurdle and filming that first video. It's gonna be bad, but just going and doing it. And so over time, my senior year, I made some videos. A couple of them went, semi-viral, a couple 100,000 views on YouTube, which was really cool. And at a certain point on YouTube, you start getting monetized, and like you're incentivized to continue creating, continue, putting out what the fans want. And that was super fun for me. And it was like a fun side hobby in college. And at the end of the year, I was able to look back and be like, wow, like I have such vivid memories that I can, remember for the rest of my life, of everything of down to like what the hotel room looked like for that travel trip that we took. So a lot of cool memories from there. And I've been out of college for 2 years now. Like you alluded to earlier, I do work a full-time job in tech, but I still make some time on the weekends to do content creation. And I say on the weekends because there's there's not a lot of time for content creation in people's daily schedules. And so that is when I'm able to make time for it, as much as I would love to do it more often and talk college athletics every day with everyone. Just once a week is as much as I can do. But yeah, my motivation to create content is really just to inspire or almost like enlighten the next generation of college athletes. Talking about stuff like this today with the recruiting process, talking about NIL, all the red flags to stay away from there. Talking about early parts of how to develop speed in the sport of swimming. So everything from swimming, college recruiting, NIL. And then I also have a little podcast that I also show on my YouTube channel, in which I interview former professional and collegiate athletes to just have good stories to tell. I don't care if you're an Olympic medalist or you're just someone who went through a crazy experience. I'm looking to, share your story to inspire the next generation.
Yeah, that's super cool. You briefly talked about monetizing your YouTube,
Yeah.
and NIL was passed midway through your college experience, I think.
My
Um,
senior year before going into my senior year. So I had 1 year of
okay,
NIL.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that sort of work, and how did you capitalize on that?
I I'm going to throw Berkeley under the bus here. They did not do a good job, and I don't think they still do a great job. But I know there's a lot of schools that really have. I spoke with the assistant director of NIL for UCLA yesterday. They're doing an incredible job with their program there. Why is that not being rolled out to the rest of the UC schools? Anyway, I would say NIL was too young in its infancy for me to really get a good grasp on what it was. Back when I was, first starting my senior year, it was kind of just a big cash grab for the football players. That's what it was originally made to be. And so the stuff that was coming to me, my YouTube channel when NIL started, I think was a couple hundred subscribers. By the end of the year, I think I'd grown it to like 10,000 subscribers. But even so, it wasn't like enough per se to like be getting those big name NIL deals. And so I kind of strayed away from most of them. I ended up getting like a couple $100 cash on like one or two deals, I want to say, my senior year. But honestly, the university made us jump through so many hoops just to get these NIL deals that like I wouldn't have done it again. And that's kind of why I started to stray away from it. Um, but I do believe there's been a lot of advancements made in NIL. And with the monetization of, I wasn't monetized until like way after NIL had passed on YouTube. So like there was no hurdles on that side or anything, which was great. But yeah, like as far as like big sponsors and anything, I don't think it was as prevalent. And I'm starting to see more sponsorships come onto the market these days for athletes of broad ranges. So I would say just just be aware of all the bad actors that are out there in the space of NIL, and speak with your college counselors, your academic athletic advisors. They'll know what to do, and most universities by now will have programs set up for this.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice because it is growing and you can see a lot of
Yeah,
athletes getting really cool deals, but there's still it's still a tricky world out there, and a lot of schools are still navigating how to adapt to that. I was a Division 3 athlete, so we didn't have any sort of NIL deals happening there. So the
it's
smaller
possible.
schools are still, yeah, it is possible, but the smaller the world of NIL is definitely, I think, hopefully we'll reach that world soon.
I think
Um,
so.
yeah. But I think those are most of my questions. Do you have any final advice for young athletes who are going through the recruiting process, wondering where they should end up, anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah, like I had a whiteboard when I was in high school that I listed out like 5 to 10 schools on. And like I said, I would kind of rank them on those four categories that I mentioned earlier: athletic, academic, location, and then just overall fit slash vibe kind of thing of the school. Just it's always great to like visualize how you're feeling because the data where you rank those 10 schools, you might start to see a pattern that like, hey, that school is number three, number two, number one. Wow, I never really thought they were like a good fit for me. And so like it's always helpful to see how you're feeling kind of thing on paper. And then I would say my biggest piece of advice is email the assistant coach and CC the head coach when you're reaching out and doing these, asking for recruiting trips or just trying to get noticed by these coaches. A lot of people will try and like flood the head coach's inbox. They're not going to be the ones that are going to be, inviting you on a recruiting trip most of the time. Most of the time, that's being done by a recruiting coordinator or the assistant coach. So it's always good to give the head coach like a heads up that you're out there. Hey, maybe he was really waiting on your email, and maybe he will respond. But most of the time, it's the job of the assistant coaches. So don't waste your effort going and emailing head coaches.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Yeah.
You gave great advice, so thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it, Bella.